So if we view writing as strategy and we view writing as problem solving, then there's 5 essential steps to this. And these are the 5 steps that you use to solve any problem that you're trying to solve. The first thing we have to do is define the problem. And now when I talk about the problem, I'm talking about the communication problem. And the communication problem is this: how do I take this information and convey it to my specific readers for a defined outcome? Right? And I'm going to repeat that: for a defined outcome. And this is where most of us fall short. Well, there's 2 areas that most of us fall short. One is defining who we're writing for. So, because most of us will say, well, I'm going to write for my boss, Joe. All righty then. You know, I was talking to this engineer in a class recently. You know, Joe, I'm writing for Joe, and Joe likes bullets, so I'm going to make everything bulleted. Okay, well, theoretically, that might work. But you also have to think about the function, right? What is it you're trying to do? And what are all the strategies you have at your disposal to achieve the outcome? But here's the thing. You need to do, there's 2 things that if you do these 2 things, your writing life will be much easier. One is you have to do a deep dive into into your readers. And we'll talk more about this shortly. It's not just that it's Joe and what does Joe want today, right? We have to think about readers long term. And I hear this all the time. Well, I'm trying to write for Joe, and I'm trying, Joe changed us, and when Joe leaves, and I have to learn to write for Sarah, and when Sarah leaves, I have to learn. That's not what it's about. Because good writing is good writing is good writing is good writing, right? So it's not about the pet peeves of any one individual. If you're constantly doing that, right, trying to hit that moving target, your writing will never improve. It just can't. Because you're trying to write, and it's very stressful to do that instead of working within the within this concept of readability studies, which is what we teach in our classes, which is why I said at the beginning, we don't talk about grammar, we talk about readability studies. Because if you understand the reason why you're doing what you're doing, that's going to carry you forward long term, not knowing where to put the comma and that kind of stupid stuff. I mean, hell, excuse me, AI can do that for you now, right? So we don't even need that. So we have to define the writing problem. Who are we writing for? And what do we want to achieve? The part about what we want to achieve is incredibly important. I call it reverse engineering. Reverse engineer your document. You have to know where you're going to be able to get there. But this is, again, what most people do. They write linearly. They start at the beginning, and then they hopefully they'll wind up somewhere, right, that's close to wherever it is they need to be, instead of thinking about what do I want to achieve with the document. And what I mean by that is, what action do you want your reader to take specifically? And action doesn't have to be physical. Action can be psychological. Action can be, wow, Pam did a really good job on this analysis, right? I like Pam. Pam's written a document that's easy for me to read and understand. Readers are constantly making decisions about you and about the document as they read. What do you want them to walk away with? You should write that down, right? So it's not just going on up here, because that can change and you're being bombarded with all kinds of information, but what is it you want to achieve? So defining the problem is the first step. The second step is gathering data, and I'm not talking about data, facts and figures and things like that. I'm talking about data, who your readers are, how they're going to respond to the document, how they respond to you, and what it is you want them to do. That's what we're talking about when we talk about data. How open will they be to doing what you need them to do? Is there some reluctance? Is there bias? Is there skepticism? These are all the things I want to know before I ever sit down to write. And so now you're probably thinking, oh, that's more work. Yeah, it absolutely 100% is more work. But you should be spending 80% of your time planning the documents and 20% of your time writing. And most people don't do that. They spend 20% of the time doing any kind of research or planning, and then 80% of the 80% of their time writing. And so what happens is there's a lot more work on the back end, a lot more reviewing that has to be done, if not by you, then by managers or whoever your reviewers are, right? So it's that idea of thinking about what can I do on the front end, right, to reduce my writing time, and planning is the way to do this. And the more you do it, the more adept you will become at it, and the more streamlined your process will become. Right, thinking about it as problem solving. The third piece of this is to generate potential solutions. Now, what I mean by that is people are very reluctant in any kind of organization to upset the apple cart. And what I mean by that is, we hear this all the time, this is the way we've always done it. This is the way we've always done it, and we're not changing. Instead of thinking about, is the way that you're doing it now working? Have you assessed that? Are you getting questions from clients? Are you getting lots of back and forth from stakeholders? What kinds of questions are you getting, right? These are the things that we should be asking, that we should be assessing when we think about our documents, but most organizations don't, unfortunately, but they should. So for instance, if I'm getting people complaining about, well, you know, it's taking too long to get to the point. Okay, that's valuable information for me to know. What can I do differently? Maybe instead of having a recommendation section at the very end, I put it at the beginning. That's a potential solution to a complaint that is taking too long to get to the issue. That's a potential solution, right? And then I test that solution, and again, assess the feedback that I get, and then implement what works.